Welcome, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight for Storytelling and Poetry, Celebrating Black Culture. I'm Clarence Reynolds, and I'll be your host for tonight's event, where we will celebrate the power of words and learn about the important role storytelling has in African tradition and in the African American cultural experience. Tonight's program is brought to you by the Orange County Regional History Center and is made possible in part by Florida Humanities and the Historical Society of Central Florida, which supports the History Center in important ways as they preserve and share Central Florida's continually unfolding story. Your membership and contributions are vitally important to fulfilling the History Center's mission to serve as a gateway for community engagement, education, and inspiration. It's a role that is needed now more than ever. And I encourage anyone interested in more information about memberships, donations, and other ways to support the History Center's mission to visit the History Center website at thehistorycenter.org. Now, tonight's program is being offered in conjunction with the History Center's current temporary run exhibition named Yesterday This Was Home, the Okoee Massacre of 1920. The exhibition explores the massacre, highlights the importance of exercising the right to vote, and asks what lessons history can inspire for moving forward. This exhibit is open through March 7th, so if you haven't had a chance yet, you still have time to visit the History Center to view this important exhibition. In addition to the live stream for tonight's event, we are happy to welcome our virtual audience who are with us via Zoom webinar. Now, we'll have some time at the end of the program for a Q&A with all of our presenters, and we encourage all of our live webinar attendees to use the chat to submit questions, and we will approach those before we close the program. Now, I'm proud to introduce our first presenter. Valada Flewellyn is a poet, storyteller, and author of Poetically Just Us, For the Children, The History of Jack and Jill of America, Incorporated, and African Americans of Sanford. Now, Valada's interest in African American history was fueled at the age of 13 by her mentor, Ichabod Flewellyn, pioneer of the African American Museum. Valada's poetry reflects and responds to social justice issues of the times.
Africa calls from the depth of my soul, yet I cannot answer. My knowledge of self is limited by the shackles of ignorance that separate me from my motherland. I turn away from Africa's cry. I care, I just don't understand.
And thank you, Valada. And to help us better understand the important role that storytelling has played for African Americans throughout our nation's history, we welcome our distinguished presenter, Dr. Obi Nwakanma. Dr. Nwakanma is an associate professor of English and Africana Studies at the University of Central Florida, where he teaches classes in poetry, the literature of the African diaspora, and the Black history ideas. Dr. Nwakanma is a poet, journalist, and literary critic who's been described by Africa Today as one of the finest contemporary poets from Africa. Nwakanma was awarded the A&A Cadbury Prize for his first poetry collection, The Roped Urn, and he's currently working on a biography of poet, philosopher, and newspaper mogul and anti-colonialist leader, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. He is, as well as completing a novel, A Bowl of Incense, and a new collection of poems named Indigo Streets.
Well, the story is a magnificent animal. That's what we often think when we talk about the story. The story is also like a maiden, a young bride going out to her wedding. Before she goes out, she is dressed up, she's ornamented, and then she's led out and presented to the groom. Of course, I know I've used a very heterosexual description of this, but you get the point. The point is, behind that veil, behind all the ornaments, is a beating heart and a face and an algorithm of parts that come together in an organic and human and complete way. It is from that point that we begin to see the story as a whole gamut of things put together in the human imagination, aimed at making a complete universe of sense, like a complete person. The story also is what we call a dangerous animal, because those who allow their stories to be told by others often regret it, because you cannot allow others to tell your story. But I will come back to this question. The reason why you can't allow others to tell your story is because they can totally undress you or misrepresent you. What we know about stories in Africa is that the great issue of the world is built into stories. We create the world with stories. We make communities with stories. We entertain ourselves with stories. We also console ourselves with stories. This tradition of story making is what has also radiated right down to what I call the Black diaspora, a chained link of people descended from Africa across the New World, in the Americas, in the United States, in North America, in South America, across the world. The story has served the same purpose for them. It has helped them to remember. Most times, when people think about story making in the African American world, they think of it as a way that story helps to reconnect them to something that is ineluctable inside them, a mystery, a past, a sort of recumbent memory that continues to gnaw at the inner consciousness of the world. In that sense, we think about the story as spirit. It is unending, it is alive, it is vital. It is the story that has saved the Black people of the world who have been displaced in other parts of the world, because through this story, they have remembered themselves, they have survived, they have connected to something powerful inside of them. It has given them their lost language, even if it's hidden inside, canals of memory. It has given them souls that might have been fragmented. There's something about the story in the African American community that helps us understand our shared beings. It is their inheritance from the African continent, that they gather in a circle and they begin to eat together and they begin to play, and stories emerge out of that play. That's what the story is all about, really, very simply. It is communion. It is the way in which we look each other in the eye and say, let me tell you, do you know our father was, our mother was, our brother fought? That is what saves people. It is what connects them to a world. It is what makes them reclaim their humanity wherever people attempt to shatter it. And that brings me again back to that question of why stories are dangerous. Stories harass emperors. They make kings and powerful men stumble and frighten them. It is well known that those who keep the legacy of stories for dear people, the griots, the storytellers, are the ones who look power in the eye and tell it to its face that it is impossible to contain people. Stories help us to tell truth to power. That is why stories are dangerous. And that is why people keep their stories, because also stories tell people about themselves. If you want to pay attention to the very detail of who you are, tell your story. Don't let anybody tell your story for you. I would possibly end with this very particular way of describing this story by the great Nigerian novelist who said, "Until the lions begin to tell their own story, the story of the hunt will belong to the hunter." Until the lions begin to tell their story, the story of the hunt will belong to the hunter. And so, that's the connection that over the years, the African American has come to realize that his story must be told through poetry, through performance, through music, through narrative, to actually begin to tell where this story began to beat us, because that will also tell us where it stopped. That's the power of stories. And that's in a simple, logical way of saying, until we embrace the stories of our world, until we do not shy from our stories and tell them either to entertain ourselves, to shape our moral universe, to remind ourselves, until we do that, we will be empty. In other words, stories do a number of things. They build communities, they heal communities, they remind communities, they give us back our memory, and they make us laugh and entertain us. I'll tell 3 very brief stories just to give a sense of how the African story-making form radiates right down into, the African-American world. Because today we know stories of Brer Rabbit, stories of Anansi, they all come from the African continent. It is the trickster story of the tortoise. One day, the tortoise was walking home, and it was a dangerous time. There was famine in the kingdom of the animals, and people were desperate. Of the most desperate kind were the most powerful kinds of animal, the lion, who sought who to eat in order to stay alive. So one day, the tortoise was on his way looking for what to eat himself, going towards his own farm. And the lion met him on that road. And the lion said, "All right, tortoise, today I've caught you. Now you shall be my dinner." And the tortoise said to the lion, "Great lion, tetrarch of this jungle, allow me one wish." And the lion said, "Well, you can have your wish. After all, after that, I will consume you." And so, without uttering another word, the tortoise began to beat on the grass and began to rumple the road and turn every place upside down. And the lion was mystified. And he said to the tortoise, "What are you doing?" The tortoise said, "Well, I want it to be known by those who come here after now that I, tortoise, gave you a great fight." As a matter of fact, that was the way he escaped the lion, because the lion didn't want to be known to have fought the tortoise, the little tortoise, and to have had a great fight with the tortoise. In other words, the tortoise wanted his own story to be told. He told his own story through action. I'll tell another story of the tortoise, and it's also going to be very short. Like all African stories, they are often episodic. The tortoise one day went, during this period of famine too, was invited to the heavens with all the birds. He borrowed the wings from his friend, the great bird, the eagle, and they flew straight up to heaven. Now, they brought a feast before the animals, and the tortoise said to the animals, you know, amongst our people, when we go to feasts, we ask the host, for whom have you brought this food? It is the manner of our people. So let us ask the host, for whom? And well, before then, the tortoise said, before we ask, we must all assume names. So each animal assumed name. One said the great hunter of the universe. The other said the great carrier of stories. And tortoise said, my name shall be all of you. And so they summoned the host and said, who brought the food? And they asked, for whom did you bring this food? And the host said, I brought it for all of you. And the tortoise said, well, you see, he brought the food for me. And the tortoise ate all the food. They brought a great mound of yams, the nest, and said, well, all right, again, for whom did you bring the food? He said, I brought it for all of you. And the tortoise said, you see, he brought it for me. And so on and on and on, and the animals were hungry and tired, and the tortoise ate all that belonged to the animals and fell asleep, satiated, while his fellow animals had gone hungry. Now came time to go home. All the animals said, well, tortoise, you have to give us back all the feathers we lent to you to fly up to this place. And the tortoise said, but how am I going to get back home to earth? I said, you should have thought about it when you ate everything that belonged to everybody. So they took each the feather he lent to the tortoise in order to get up to the great steeps of heaven. Well, tortoise said to his friend the hawk, just do me one favor, one final favor. Tell my wife Aliyah when you get down to earth to put on the ground the softest things so that I will jump from heaven and have a soft landing. And the hawk said, okay, and he got home to earth, and Aliyah said, where is my husband? He said he's still sleeping up there, but he said to give you a message. 2, bring all the hard stuff that you can find, rocks, irons, anything that you can find, and lay it down so that he will show his great magical capacity to all of us, the animals. And so Aliyah went and gathered rocks and all kinds of things and laid it down and gave a signal to her husband, and the tortoise came crashing from heaven and fell on those hard stuff and cracked his back. And that's why till today you could still see the back of the tortoise swollen and cracked. That's the reason. That's what Africans used to instruct children. Do not be greedy. Do not take that which belongs to everybody. You must be collegial. So you see, you don't need philosophy, you need stories. Well, stories themselves are philosophies, compressed to really, really, really communicable ideas. I'll tell one other story, and it is the story of a beautiful young woman called Marlinda Omari. Omari was so beautiful, the kind of beauty that touched one's head. She did not feel herself capable of marrying anyone. She was too beautiful, and she was indeed beautiful. She was the daughter of a very, very wealthy and prominent man in this town, and Omari thought that the only man to whom she could pledge herself would be the best, the most handsome, the wealthiest. None could attract her beyond herself. She was very beautiful, very, very self-content. Her mother would plead to her, find a young, hard-working man. And she said, none of these men, none, can woo me, can match me. She had many suitors from north to south, west to east. They came streaming, looking for her hand in marriage. And Omali refused, rejected all of them. And her parents were saying, okay, at the best time. Omali's fame reached all the great beyond to the land of the spirits. And you know, the skull, a spirit, heard about Omali and decided to come and marry Omali. So, one day, he set out and borrowed a face, borrowed study hands, borrowed the finest physique, borrowed allurements around him that made him the most handsome man that you could ever put your eyes on. And she crossed the land of the spirits, from the land of spirits, 7 seas and 7 lands, and crossed to Omali's town, to the market square. And a story went around the town that the most handsome man had arrived at Omali's town. And Omali heard and came to see for herself. And indeed, there was the most handsome man ever created. And she fell madly in love. And she took this young man to her parents, and her parents said, Omali, where is he from? He said, I do not want to know. This is the man I want to marry. Who is she? I do not want to know. This is the man I want to marry. What does he do? I have no interest in knowing. This is the one that is for me. Her mother begged her. Her father begged her. And they sang, Omalinda, Omalinda, wam. Omalinda, 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 wam. Omalinda, negisi biko chelumo. Omalinda, negisi biko lotabem. Omalinda. Omalinda said, no, that is who I want to marry. And they allowed the feast to take place. And so, the marriage took place, and the young man then said, it's time for us to return to where I truly come from. And so she took Omali and crossed and crossed and crossed and crossed, and they got to the boundary between the living and the dead. And Omali said, where are you going? He said, today you shall find out where you are married to. And they crossed that boundary of the living and the dead. It was then that it struck Omalinda that this was a spirit. Not just that he was a spirit, he was a man-eating spirit. It was a cannibal spirit. And then she fainted, but the spirit caught her. And then as they went back to his home, he gave back all the parts that he borrowed until he became only a skull. Omalinda knew that she was actually in trouble. And it was only even worse when they got to her home and this skull's mother, an old shriveled thing, said to her son, we shall feast on her tonight. And she said, no, we need to first of all gather the rest so that it is properly done. Everyone will have a part. But that night, Omali took care of the old woman in a way that she had not been taken care of before, prepared her food, tucked her in, made her feel comfortable. And the next morning, it was she who said to her son, keep this one for the moment. We shall find what to do about her. And in the course of the year, her parents had not heard from her nor from their son-in-law. So they sent a great, the bird, they sent the eagle to find out. Wherever my daughter is, find out where she is. And the eagle flew across the sea and discovered where Omari was in captivity, basically in captivity. And she came back and reported to Omari's father that Omari was as good as gone. Omari's father sent a great wave to go and bring back the daughter. The great wave came and returned. Then sent the gentle breeze. The gentle breeze went and returned. I said, it's impossible, we cannot break. And so the great man said, all right, whoever can bring my daughter back to me, I shall give half my wealth. It was then that a young man of indistinct parentage, a hermit, a fine horseman nonetheless, and a fisherman came and said, I will bring your daughter back to you. And he said to him, if you bring my daughter, I shall give you half my wealth. And so the young horseman went and arrived where Omari was. And one night, he beat his time. And one night, he smuggled himself into the Skull's compound and stole Omari while everybody else was sleeping, took her, and as a matter of fact, rode through the boat, and for 7 days and 7 nights, pursued by the spirits, he managed to bring Omari back home. And there was great celebration, and there was great feasting, and his father kept his promise. And it was not only that he kept his promise, Omari said, this is the man who rescued me from myself, and therefore I too shall marry him. And that was the moral of this story. It is not all that glitters that is gold. Simple way of putting it, but that is what it is. And that's my 3 stories for tonight. I will end this presentation with a poem from Indigo Streets, my current collection of poems that is unpublished. I'll give you just a very brief background to what this particular poem is all about. It is actually, the background is a small city called Cairo, Illinois. It tells the story of the race riots that destroyed the city, and the riots in 1967, in which a young African-American man, soldier, who returned home on leave, was lynched, leading to a race war in 1967 that virtually destroyed the city of Cairo, Illinois, which was a historically, in many ways, a historically black city with a white population that was at the cusp of its most prosperous era at the end of the Civil War. And so this is what this poem is all about. It's just its background. Of course, it says many other things. A new squall now takes the sea, and I must find harbor. I, Hermes, groaning hard at my crippled mast. And as the blast rips free my hull from its girding rope, I came to in Cairo, Illinois. It was empty and deserted. The winds were howling in its trees. A great plague had come to this city. The river is my witness. The blind old miss smoking her pipe from the steamboats that belched smoke from the stacks, and stack upon stack of history tumbling down from the raised houses, crumbling, brick and mortar of this town suppurating from decades of an unhealed wound. An unveiled past is a face whose beauty still burns with shame. From a victim's blood, that was poured fresh on the altar stone of indiscreet rage. Here now are the banks of reeds, the arrogant weed growing, the smooth worn rocks from the lash of the sea against this emptiness. Time resides here, permanent and inscrutable, immovable. Only the afflicted remain, hugging the city walls. And here, you may shun the stories of bitter wars and grim famines, and be drunk from the grapes of the Sidonian slopes. But the dark Erie River is flowing with blood. Cairo was uptight. She ferried webs of the lineages of the black herd fleeing the south, and looking to the sea with longing. Her name sprung of something ancient and familiar, beckoned. You must go, O river, to that time when that young buck arrived, a soldier, black and uppity, fresh from the pumpkin groves, to rest a while in Cairo and bathe his feet in warm spring. They found him sleeping among the roses, and they smote him with their knives and hung him on a tree from a rope woven of old twine. And an old contagion came to town and wiped the people from the palm of the earth. They fled from the White Hart's cloxing with the indefatigable rage of savage men, and the river twisted with pain, like the boar called towards the rising sun, and Hermes stood alone in the wind-swept streets. The hum of time and the timeless echo of the waters rang the bells, and there came from the deep shadows an old man measuring time. What happened here, I asked. This town ate itself, said the old man, who remembered a time when there were still people hustling up and down Central Street, carrying these casks up and down the hills to the shebeens. There remains a monument, the great old houses, now on the National Registry of Deserted Places, where the American dream turned rank. The long and fatal war of the races, said the old man, is just the same old story of the Lapids and the Centaurs fighting, drunk from wine. Our quarrels have now faded into a whisper, but Cairo, once a lucent island of gods, now lies desolate and have turned to dust. Boy, learn the taste of nectar. Do not corrupt your tongue with bad wine, ill-pressed from bitter grapes. The old man stooped with time, turned his ears once again to the echo of waters. Thank you very much.
The power of story. Thank you, Dr. Nwakanma. And again, this is a reminder to all of our webinar guests. If you have any questions for Dr. Nwakanma or any of our presenters tonight, feel free to post those in the chat for us to address at the end of the program. Now, the year 2020 marked the 100th anniversary of the Okoee Massacre, which remains the largest incident of voter day violence in the United States history. In addition to the History Center's Yesterday This Was Home exhibition, the Central Florida community came together in remembrance of this tragedy in a variety of ways. The Alliance for Truth and Justice began in 2015 with a small group of community-minded leaders with the vision of acknowledging the shadow of our racial past and liberating our communities to heal. And the Alliance has accomplished a great deal for our community as they execute their mission to facilitate a new era of race relations from the ground up through research, educational forums, exhibitions, historical markers, and commemorative soil collections. As part of the alliance, Valada Flewellyn has been intimately acquainted with the effort to bring the history of the Okoye Massacre to light and to bring the community together in remembrance. And for more information about the Okoye Massacre and the Alliance for Truth and Justice, please visit okoemassacre.com.
We all have skin on the rope. Whether a neck on the rope or a hand on the rope, we all have skin on the rope. The pain of that connection grips us, entangles us, compels us to examine our history, then construct tomorrow to manifest the wounds that need more than a Band-Aid, wounds that warrant more than a cursory examination. We must dissect the fibers of our history, inspect our suspect moral consciousness, which allows sin to fester as we turn our heads away from the atrocities that grab our children, drowning them in the muck of our making, leaving them unprepared, unprotected, but infected generation after generation from our refusal to acknowledge how we have failed our children all. We all have skin on the rope. Will be my theme in glory, to tell the age-old story of a people I do love. Once told by Freedom's Journal, told in the old North Star, the story of a people and just how great they are. A story, a story. There is always a story. When there is nothing else, there is always a story. I have a story, and you have a story too. But let me tell you, there is no one in the whole wide world who can tell your story better than you. I love to tell the story. And today, I would like to share with you a story that inspired me to write a poem. In the book Mules and Men, written by our local poet and storyteller Zora Neale Hurston, I happened upon a story that I would like to share with you, and then the poem that story inspired. The wind is a woman, and the water is a woman too. They used to talk together a whole heap, talking about their children. Mama Wind used to go sit down by the ocean and talk and patch and crochet. They were just like all mamas. They loved to talk about their children and brag on them too. My water used to say, look at my children. I's got the biggest and the littlest in the world. All kind of children, every color in the world and every shape. My wind bragged louder than my water. Oh, I got more different children than anybody in the world. They flies, they walks, they swims, they sings, they talks, they cries. They got all the colors from the sun. Lord, my children sure is a pleasure. Tain't nobody got no babies like mine. My water got tired of hearing about my wind's children. She hated them. One day, a whole passel of her children come up to Ma Wind and says, Ma, we's thirsty. Can we go get us a cool drink of water? She says, yeah, children, run on over to Mrs. Waters and hurry back soon now. When them children went to quench their thirst, Ma Water grabbed them and drowned them. When the children didn't come home, Ma Wind got worried. So she went down to the water and asked for her babies. Good evening, Miss Water. You see my children today? The water woman told her, no. Ma Wind knew her children had come down to Miss Waters, so she passed over the ocean, calling her children. And every time she called, the white caps would come up on top of the water. And that's how come we got white caps on waves. It's the children coming up when Mama Wind calls out for her lost babies. So when you see a storm on the water, it's Ma Wind and Ma Water fighting over them children. That story touched me, inspired me to write a poem that I call White Cats on Waves. White women, you are the water. Black women, the wind. Together, we gurgle in the belly of a storm of sin. Children need water to satisfy their thirst, the sanctity of motherhood. Children, the salt of the earth. They flies, they walks, they swims, they sings, they talk, they cries, they serve in battles, and they dies. Taking their colors from your fathers, your husbands, your sons, my children, to the water run. Dodging lies, ropes, axes, and guns, they run, trapped in our storm, time and time again, trying to quench their thirst. My children are the wind. The wind may seem impossible to embrace. Look at your children. See my children's face. White caps on wind. on waves. Yes, 2021 is the year of the family, a year where we celebrate our togetherness. The family is not only our familiar surroundings, but it is our community, our nation. We celebrate the fact that we are family. And this month in February, we celebrate the story of the Black family. We celebrate those stories that have been hidden. We bring forth our truth. No one can tell your story better than you. Eternity embraces the Black family. Its members, all grand. Eternity embraces the Black family. Dear Lord, you have helped us to stand. Against all that has tried to divide us, you continue to protect, to guide us. There were difficult times in our past, yet countless achievements are found. It is the strength of our Black family that gives us solid ground. From kings in Africa, it seems, to America's king and his dream. From the message once told by the drums to the spirituals continually sung, our history is alive and made whole. For in every significant achievement, there is a Black family story to unfold. For the most powerful roots in history are those that anchor the Black family tree. Let us celebrate it.
Wow, thank you for that, Valada. And for our final presentation tonight, we are thrilled to welcome Ruth King. Born into a musical family with blues, pop, and jazz notes, Ruth found her life stage set for a career in blues. Her original music can be found on all major music streaming platforms and at ruthkingblues.com. Additionally, Ruth is looking forward to the upcoming release of her memoir, Zebra, Lost and Found Between Two Races. While writing her memoir, she discovered she knew the cure for racism. The answer had always been there. Having been born into Black and white racism on both sides, Ruth found a way to win the war against hate. To share this remedy and to heal the schism of our nation's racial divide is Ruth's heartbeat and passion for blending song with solution.
Thank you. Healing means change. Any healing, all healing, change is what we're looking for. And racial healing, healing racism, that's change as well. If there was an award given for change, the award for the most changed and the award for the most changed goes to, it would have to be, hands down, the butterfly. Change takes courage. You look like an enemy. You don't look like me. I don't know your name. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 legs, 2 feet. But when you speak, we don't sound the same. If I change my mind, will I still be me? If I change my mind about the things I believe, it takes courage to give love a try. It takes the courage of the butterfly. Yeah. Caterpillar walks walks in step, each step in harmony with the next. The butterfly has wings to fly, to soar and fly so high, so high. If I change my mind, will I still be me? If I change my mind about the things I believe, it takes courage to give love a try. It takes the courage of the butterfly. Afraid to look beyond what I know. When my head says stop, but my heart says go. Even when you're crying, I feel sad, and then feel glad because you're smiling. Now we can be friends at last. Within our grasp, our silver lining. If I change my mind, will I still be me? If I change my mind about the things I believe, it takes courage to give love a try. It takes the courage of the butterfly. The courage of the butterfly. The butterfly with all its colors, sisters and brothers, and the storm. A new religion, brave and true, long overdue. Our love transforms. The mind can always change. It can. The mind can change. And the heart will always follow. A very wise friend, a brave lady named Nanny B. She once told me, she said, Ruth, if you can't be willing, you can be willing to be willing. There's a time to go inside the heart of all that one holds dear, to grow above our childish ways and trust beyond our fears, a leading that can only come from deep within the soul. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness, a new day dawning, bringing out into the light a new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night is love revealing. Beneath the skin we're all the same. The answer is simple. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. Where once was violence and hatred everywhere, is now forgiveness with best intentions at the core. A new tradition where every person counts. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness, a new day dawning, bringing out into the light a new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night is love revealing. Beneath the skin, we're all the same. The answer is simple. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. We become addicted to our mindsets, slaves to what's not true. Let's never forget that a child of God lives within me and you. There's a time to go inside the heart of all that one holds dear, to grow beyond our childish ways and trust above our fears, a leading that can only come from deep within the soul. Equality with dignity, respect and human kindness, a new day dawning, coming out into the light, a new way becoming, a beacon shining through the night is love revealing. Beneath the skin, we're all the same. The answer is simple. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world. A willingness to change is all it takes to heal a world of pain. Oh, yeah. The truth. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. Time to spread our newborn wings. Time to spread our newborn wings. Time to spread our newborn wings and fly. A new day dawning. Oh yes, and as we spread those newborn wings that we have, we are being the goodness that we are. Within each one of us, there's this seed of unity. And I'm speaking to that seed of unity, and I'm saying, wake up, wake up. It's time. We are putting down the barriers of hate. We are winning. We are winning with love. We are winning for love, aren't we? And in the music that I do, my records and my concerts and my writings and the work that I get to do with the Alliance for Truth and Justice, I am diversity. See, I am just as Caucasian as I am African American. That's my story. That's true. But we are all diversity. You are diversity. That's who we are. That's who humanity is. Doesn't that make it convenient? One less thing to worry about, huh? Now the question is, can we embrace all? say, yeah, I've seen it. We're doing this. I never met you, but your hope lives in my bones. It's alchemy, magnificence of love. Embracing difference is our living legacy. This is zebra. It's another word for free. Can you zebra? Your very name means unity. Can you zebra? We move in blended harmony. Zebra motion dazzle means our kindness makes us whole. Zebra's not a color, it's the mindset of a soul. Oh, you who have lived and walked through so many trials that you have invented ways to get up to the other side. And you have not thought of yourself alone. To others you give hope, encouraging, empowering the vision. To be like zebra means equality for all, common dignity, inclusion beautiful. Black stripes and white stripes moving toward our common goal. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. We're different and we're one. Can you zebra? Your very name means unity. Can you zebra? We move in blended harmony. Zebra motion dazzle means our kindness makes us whole. Zebra's not a color, it's the mindset of a soul. Oh, you who have lived and walked through so many trials that you have invented ways to get up to the other side. And you have not thought of yourself alone. To others you give hope. I know you can, you've shown you can. Come on now, can you zebra? Your very name means unity. Can you zebra? We move in blended harmony. Zebra motion dazzle means our kindness makes us whole. Zebra's not a color, it's the mindset of the soul. Oh, you can you zebra? Unity, possibility, harmony. Can you zebra? Unity, this is love, possibility. I can feel it, harmony. Can you feel it too? Can you zebra? The world is in you. Unity, possibility, harmony. Can you zebra? Unity, this is love, possibility. I can feel it, harmony. Can you zebra? Thank you.
Great music from Ruth, and thank you so much for being here. Also, thank you to all of our presenters for the beautiful contributions that you've made to our celebration tonight. And we have received a few questions from our virtual audience, so let's go ahead and get to some of those in our remaining few minutes. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Nwakanma, since you're there, Nwakanma. How important is it for us to harvest those stories from our own families, especially from our elders, to learn more about who we are?
A fantastic question, especially because, as we say in the old continent, when an old man or woman dies, an entire library disappears. My father used to say, and I didn't quite understand him at the time, what I see sitting down, you can't see standing up because you're too young. Well, I think it is important that, the young pay attention to the old, not because the old is anything else other than the fact that they have seen time, they have stories, they have experience, and they may not be the brightest in the room, but they are certainly likely to be the wisest in the room. And so, harvesting stories through what they say, what they think about. On family dinner tables, you hear stories of all kinds. But the most important of those stories are the stories that say, look here, young man, when I was in the Marines, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this. That is the layer of the family story, of your history. It's important to harvest them, not only from the mind of the old, but also from, perhaps in fact, the mouth of babes, because they too tell stories. So yes, the first sight of the story is the family living room, and it's important to start harvesting our family stories from that moment.
Excellent, excellent. Also, we have a question for Valada. Valada, how did you first learn about the Okoye Massacre and become involved with the Alliance for Truth and Justice? And also, is any work being done to continue sharing the history of the Okoye Massacre behind or after the 100-year anniversary?
I heard about the Okoye Massacre not long after moving to Orlando. I had some inklings about it from Ichabod Flewellyn when I was younger. He would tell me stories about Eatonville being the first incorporated town and mention other things about Florida. But I was young, and whereas I heard the stories, I wasn't really listening the way I listen today as an older person. So when I came to Orlando and I saw Eatonville, I recognized it right away. And then the Okoye story resonated somewhat with me, but I really realized the depth of the story as an adult in my later years. And then I was invited to be a founding member of the Alliance for Truth and Justice, and the story became more intimate as we read the research that had been done and decided to take an active role in the healing.
Thank you for that. And also a question for Ruth, and actually we'll have all of the panelists if they would like to add to this, but we'll start with you, Ruth. Can you speak to the role of storytelling in combating racism and discrimination, and also what can individuals do to help in that effort?
I love that question. I love that question because I feel there's an emotional quotient to the racism I experience. And if I've wrestled my whole life to know what to do with that. I was told early on, just ignore it. And that's not it. That doesn't work because I still feel it. I don't care if I'm trying to change my mind. The answer is let it hurt me. I let racism hurt me because that's what it's meant to do. And when I let it hurt me, I can get over it, and I can find forgiveness. If you can solve a problem, you can stop a fight by finding out who threw the first punch. And the way I have discovered to heal racism is to go to that one who seems to have some kind of malady and seems to be at a disadvantage, and that would be the racist person, and to love them. Now, maybe I'm certainly not going to put up with abuse, but I'm going to love that person best I can. And I'm a storyteller by simply sharing my experience. And I share the hurts, I share the wounds, and I share the perplexities, the emotions, the thoughts, and then I know I'm not alone. I know when folks read my story, they'll be able to relate to it. Maybe not be able to relate to loving the racist, but I'm just one of those people who have found something that's worked. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Thanks for asking.
Anybody else want to contribute to that? Valada?
I think through our story, we bear our truths. We talk about how we feel, what we believe, and I'm of the belief that it's difficult for any group of people to sit at a table for any length of time sharing each other's story and walk away from that table not feeling some kind of love for that person. And the longer we do that, the more endearing we become, because the monster you don't know is more of a monster, because for everything there is a reason. And once we get through story to the core of why and who we are. Once we bear our truths, we come naked with our truths. It's very difficult not to find in those truths common threads that will weave us together. So I believe wholeheartedly in the power of storytelling in all the ways that we can tell it, through our music, through our poetry, through our dance, through our art. It's so important that we share our truths.
Excellent point. Thank you so much, Dr. Nwakanma.
Okay. So one day, a riot broke out in its city. One part of town was carrying cordials to go and kill people in another part of town. And they found this young milk selling child on the street selling milk. And they came after her, a young lady, and they came after her, and she said, please, I too am your sister. That's her story. You know? Mm-hmm. And her pursuers stopped, moved by that single plea. I too am your sister. That is a story. It's a story that continues from that declaration that began to say, okay, tell us more. And from then, they began to see, in fact, that they are related. Every part of us, when we move in one direction, we find those we know in a straight line. Again, according to the sage of my people, they who throw stones should beware not to throw stones in the market square, because it might hit your kinsman. The market space is a large crowd. Never throw stones. Beware that you do not throw stones into the market square, because it may hit somebody you know. We are connected in fundamental ways. That's what stories do. As we share stories, as we listen to each other, the stories of our world come from one specific place. That is that core of our humanity. That's what stories do.
Well, you have all shown us that how connected we are by these stories, and I want to thank again our guests, Valada Flewellyn, Dr. Nwakanma, and Ruth King for joining us tonight to celebrate the contributions of Black and African American poetry and storytelling in America's cultural landscape. It has been a privilege to highlight your expertise and, of course, your artistry for this event. And we also want to thank our audience for attending tonight. The Orange County Regional History Center is honored by your continued support. And I would like to encourage you all to visit thehistorycenter.org to learn more about their upcoming events, exhibits, and opportunities. I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.